A note to the listeners, episode 38 contains some explicit language and mature content.
Word nerd, wordsmith, wordy, wordless. Oxford Dictionary says a word is a single, distinct, meaningful element of speech or writing, used with others or sometimes alone. We say each one matters. No extra words is literature, minimalist style. And we're getting you right to the story.
Improvisation by Philip Sterling. This is no joke. A man walks into a hotel lounge and sits on a low-back stool at the end of the bar. From there, he can see the hallway he just came through, the TV arching from the ceiling, and me idling by the taps. Morning, I say, a polite but tentative single word, as I know all too well how early patrons I'd just opened tend to keep to themselves. Coffee? Timing, says the man, as if it was the name of a breakfast drink. He's 60 maybe, longish gray hair, somewhat mussed and flatter on the left side, as though he'd slept on it. Yellow golf shirt. He's been focusing on the TV since he sat down. It's the Bob Newhart show, part of Madcap Morning, which I usually have on before the salespeople stop in for liquid fortification and ask for sports or weather, something I imagine they use for small talk during a pitch. I prefer humor, so when I'm by myself, I tune in sitcoms, reruns. The man doesn't elaborate. He doesn't order anything. He's so engrossed with the TV above me that I turn to see what his interest is, and there is Larry introducing himself, and his brother Darryl, and his other brother Darryl for the umpteenth time. I huff a laugh, can't avoid it, even the umpteenth time. Timing, the man repeats. That's all life is. I laugh again to acknowledge his assertion, and then I agree, as I would agree with any barstool philosopher, a professional stance that has proven profitable. The best tip is a good ear, an old barman once told me. Humor 'em. It's advice I've heeded ever since. Something while you wait, I ask, despite his not answering me about the coffee. He's staring at the TV, ignoring the coaster I'd set on the bar. He seems preoccupied. I assume then that he's here for some other reason than to gulp a quick breakfast. More likely, he's meeting someone. Like comedy, he says. Everything's in the timing. Or evolution, I reply, to play up the comedy idea. I'm thinking of the nature episode I'd watched on PBS before switching to the retro channel. I mean to catch his ear, to sound friendly, interested, even clever. The man remains silent as the station goes to commercial, promoting discounts for a Carnival Line vacation. We're back to regular programming when he speaks again. You know the best time for a cruise to the Caribbean, he says. Although it sounds like the setup for a punchline, he hasn't given any hint of good humor, so I play it straight. Off season? Before it's too late, he says. Before your wife of 39 years gets cancer. I'm not sure the sheep would find that funny, says Newhart from the TV. He's holding a phone to his ear. He pauses, and the audience laughs. Timing, repeats the man, his eyes fixed on the screen. What else can it be?
Hi there, welcome to No Extra Words, the Flash Fiction Podcast. My name is Chris Baker-Dersch. I'm your producer and editor. It sounds like the setup for a punchline. Today's stories are all about walking that line between a joke and not a joke. I almost called this one Confessions of a Bartender because it is a little bit about the strange things that happen in bars, but the line between funny and serious is an interesting one, and these stories today, each one of them lives on a different side of the line, but they definitely play with it. So that's where we're at today. I hope you enjoyed the special episode on Nels Hansen that came out last weekend. It was a real pleasure to feature him on the show. More special episodes featuring our Contributor Appreciation Month winners are coming. Not this week, but maybe as early as next week. I guess you'll have to stay tuned and find out. It was really fun to get to feature one of our authors. I wish we could do a special feature on everybody that contributes to the show, but as soon as I say that out loud, there's a panic that rises up in me of all that work. So we'll have to look for new and different opportunities to feature the voices of our contributors, because I want this to be wonderful short fiction, but I also want it to be building a community and having the real people behind those stories shine. So that's what's going on. Speaking of stories, if you are a baseball person and have not yet sent us your baseball story, do it now. Do it right now. Those need to arrive by March 18th, and the sooner the better. So there's all kinds of exciting things ahead. Up next, a story that lives on the other side of the line from improvisation. Stay tuned. Dial 116 by Robert Lunday. Melanie intermittently dated, never more than a few months with the same guy. They had all been drippy, mean, flaky, or fake. Lately, with some worry but also excitement, Melanie had been seeing the thin and handsome Brad. They'd been going out for 6 weeks, though often in the company of her best friend Barb and one of Barb's weird, dangerous-looking men, with whom Brad seemed to get along fine, as he did with everyone she saw him talk to. When he stayed over, they'd sit on the couch or lie in bed watching movies. She'd size him up with a sideways glance, and sometimes he'd look like a bored babysitter. She'd feel unwanted and would squeeze his hand, which he'd mechanically squeeze back. Once she had been angry with him, at a club, just the two of them, without Barb and one of her hairy, scary brutes, sitting in a lounge area away from the dance floor. He drifted several feet away, and a goth chick had sat down on the arm of his chair, fingering his hair with a long black fingernail, and leaning in to whisper while pushing her right boob into his shoulder. Melanie thought of leaving, going home, and never talking to him again. Just as she was about to stand and walk out, a woman in a super-tight black leather one-piece like Emma Peel from The Avengers bent down where Melanie was seated, kissed her lightly on the cheek, and slipped a business card into her right hand before gliding away. Taken aback, Mel looked at the card but could barely see it in the dim light. She dropped the card into her purse. The music thumped hard in her skull, and she was sick. The goth chick flitted away like a bat, and Brad play-grovelled over toward Melanie, which made her feel freakish and alone. He slid down into her chair, and she pushed him off, eventually leaving as she'd intended, cabbing home solo and crying herself to sleep. Brad called 2 days later, apologetic, but Mel declined to see him. But she was letting him come over tonight. Melanie heard the buzzer and let him up, opening her door to his big grin, which she met with a thin, tentative smile. They were stripped and in bed within 5 minutes. Wham, bam, a few more tears, and before too long, as they lay back to back, she could hear his snore. She got up to dress and think. Mel closed the bedroom door and stood in her living room. She tightened her robe, then saw Brad's phone on her round formica table. Impulsively, instinctively, she grabbed the phone and started snooping. There were calls from a Vilma Ryder, and the same number among the texts. One racy, hot, dry-humping back and forth between Vilma and Brad. Mel was stinging all over and felt filthy inside. Brad's snore came through the bedroom door. It sounded obscene. She eyed a knife on the kitchen counter. Then, rising up in her brain, an image of the business card the Emma Peel lady had placed in her hand. Mel reached over and fished around in her purse until she found it. BBB, Bad Boyfriends Bureau. Make them go away. Call 116. And on the back, you know you want to. What is this, art? Mel thought. Stupid, but maybe it'd be, cathartic. She imagined a radical feminist group recording chants, spells, or whatever. Picking up her phone, she called 116. It rang twice. Bad Boyfriends Bureau, make them go away. How can I help you? What? Said Melanie. BBB, ma'am. This is Melanie Krasinski, isn't it? 248 Linden Avenue, apartment 4C. Bad boyfriend Brad Bellamo, correct? Wait, how do you know who I am? Computers, Miss Krasinski. It's in the database. You're calling to have a Brad Bellamo disappear. Can you confirm? Yeah, sure, Mel said, playing along. Right, just a moment. Melanie heard a series of keystrokes, then a last hard click and enter. Okay, Miss Kozinski, that's all. Thanks for calling the BBB. Good night. Melanie sat still at her round Formica table. What the fuck was that, she wondered. Well, whatever. She felt better. A little theatrics really is kind of cathartic. She looked at the door to her bedroom and noted that Brad was no longer snoring. The silence was eerie. The air felt lighter, and she had a notion to go to the door, open it, and... Holy shit! Where the fuck is he? She asked, she said out loud, staring at the empty bed. Smoke or steam hovered above it. She backed out and swiveled toward the bathroom, peeking in, then searching behind the shower curtain and in the clothes hamper. No Brad. What the fuck? She whispered to no one. Brad, she called out, peering into the bedroom again, poking her head into the closet, looking under the bed. She sat back down at her table, shaking a little. She looked at her phone, picked it up, then dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Hello, this is crazy, but I think my boyfriend disappeared. I think something's happened to him. Where did you last see him, ma'am? Well, right here. I mean, in my apartment. I dialed some number and he just wasn't there. Wait, back up, ma'am. You said you dialed the number and he disappeared. Do you mean 116, the BBB? How did you know? I mean, that's not real. You dialed it, ma'am. Of course it's real. Everyone knows about the BBB. Us girls, anyway. That's all they do. Bad boyfriends. What? Said Melanie, a bit dazed. Ma'am, you can't undo a 116 with a 911 call. It's not reversible. Please don't call 911 when you don't have an emergency. And you don't have an emergency, ma'am. You have an opportunity. Yeah, right, said Mel, but the 911 operator had already hung up. She couldn't move for a while. It was so weird. Mel reached for her phone again and opened photos. She and Brad had gone to the Greenbelt a month ago. She'd snapped some pics. Swish, swish, swish. No Brad. It seems she had gone biking with Barb, not Brad. Pics of a smiling Barb, a smiling Mel, and then someone had taken a picture of them together. She poked into the rest of the albums, but no Brad. Then she fired up her laptop and scrolled through all the photos. No Brad, no Brad. But there was Chad. Ugh, she'd forgotten about him. And Julio from a couple of years ago, who'd flown back to Colombia without saying goodbye, and others she preferred not to think about. Still no... Who? Brad. He was already fading from memory. This business was making her lightheaded. Actually, she was famished. Pasta salad, she mumbled, and got up from the couch to pull stuff out. The penne, the celery, the bell peppers, the tomatoes, the black olives. As she boiled water for the pasta, she reached again into her purse for the card from the BBB. Freaky stuff. She started chopping the veggies. What about a bad girlfriend's bureau, she wondered. Chop. Chop. She stopped cutting and considered it. Nah, she said aloud. That's not a thing. Chop. Chop. Chop.
Thanks for listening to the No Extra Words podcast. For more information on today's stories and contributors, or to learn how to submit your own work, please visit us at noextrawords.wordpress.com. The best support you can give the show is to recommend us to your family and friends. See you next time.